Okay, we are live.
You're listening to the Femtrepreneur Show, and this is episode 4. In this episode of the Femtrepreneur Show, we're talking about how to choose your course topic when you have multiple potentially good ideas. And we're going to be giving you the criteria that we use personally to decide which courses to pursue and which ones to save for later. Hey guys, it's Mariah.
And I'm Megan Mins. And this week we actually got two very similar questions. I'm going to go ahead and read them both. So Emily asked, how do I pick my first course to make when I have 3 different topics that I'm extremely passionate about? And the other question we got was from Raven, who said, what do we do if 2 completely different course ideas we've already put out to our followers are both getting the same popular response? How do I choose which one to pursue?
This is a good question.
I know. Well, I know that's 2 questions, but I think they're coming from a different angle, but the answer can still help them both.
I think so too. I think the answer that we have applies to anyone who feels like either A, they have multiple ideas that they're equally passionate about, or the passion isn't necessarily there, but they feel like, well, my audience told me that they wanted these 2 courses equally. And I know I've done surveys in the past where not only did the results surprise me, but like 2 ideas kind of floated to the top where I was like, okay, how am I going to choose?
Yeah, which do you do
right.
first?
And it's almost a thing of like, at that point, you need a further criteria in order to decide. And so over many, many years of doing this, I actually came up with an actual criteria. That's this little sheet of paper that I fill out because it has happened a lot of times where, I remember when I first started thinking about creating any type of course, like before I created my first course, I think I had 10 or 20 ideas. Like I thought that I was going to end up making 20 courses. Yeah, like some insane number that I was like, oh, how will I ever choose? But then when I actually looked at the criteria that I developed for this exact purpose, I was like, you know what? It's really obvious now which one I should choose. And everything else that you don't choose, it's not that you don't like it or that you're never going to get to do it. It just means that you're going to, wait until a couple months from now to start working on it, or you're going to put it on the back burner until you have more resources or it's a better time for you. So that's totally fine. Just choosing one topic doesn't mean that you're like killing all your other topics forever.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's funny you say you had so many ideas because I feel like I was on the opposite end of the spectrum where I was like, I know I'm an expert in what I talk about, but I had no idea how to turn that into anything. So it's just, yeah. I think people will relate to both of those. But I think it's interesting since they already have ideas and they're passionate or they've got a popular response, picking can be a little hard. So like, what would you say is like the first step into picking the right topic?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, if you guys are listening and you're like, I don't even have one topic, like how we were both just saying, like whether you're on one side of the fence or the other, we want you to go to thefemshow.com/4. And in that, on the show notes, we're going to actually link to a blog post that I wrote called the 5 like fail-proof course topic ideas so that you can go and get started picking your topic, because that really is step 1. So once you've done that, then this episode would be perfect for anyone who's like, yeah, okay, I have 2 different things that I love equally, or 2 different things that seem to both have legs. Sometimes we get people saying like, my audience really wants a course. Like I surveyed my audience and they want a course about something that I don't want to make a course about. Like I've seen that happen.
Well, you've experienced that too, even, right?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Like my audience, like the Femtrepreneur audience has been like, a segment of the audience has been begging for like an Etsy course. And I'm just like, that's not, even though I know it would be successful because of all the responses we get, it's not the direction that we're going in. So, yeah.
Okay.
So if you feel,
yeah, I was just going to say, so they should go to thefemshow.com/4 to get the link to that blog post if they need help coming up with ideas. Okay, perfect.
Absolutely. So if you really truly feel, and this is, I think you got to check in with yourself, right? You got to really make sure that you're not just thinking like, oh no, I really love all these ideas. And you're not just being like, overly attached. You got to check in with yourself and make sure like, would you truly want to make all of these ideas? Let's say you have two or three potential course topics and you're saying, I don't know which one to pick, but like if I pointed at one and said, you have to make that one, and you would be like, oh no, I kind of want to do, then like,
Yeah.
you know that one of them kind of comes out on top. So really check in with yourself and make sure. But then what I really wanted to talk about was this idea that we've spoken about before, all about the idea of low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And so, Megan, you tell me, I really like the way that you describe this, and you talk about how it's not being lazy, it's just being smart.
Yeah. Well, so to me, low hanging fruit is all about just like yeah, I feel like I have to always disclaimer before I even dig it, even though you already kind of disclaimered. I feel like the phrase low hanging fruit has this like bad connotation to it where it's like, oh, the low hanging fruit. That's like, you're kind of like,
It's too easy.
you love your skeezy salesperson if you go for the low hanging fruit. I don't know why, but that's just like a connotation I feel like that has come around. And that is not what low hanging fruit is at all. Low hanging fruit is what is the easiest for you to actually do. Like with the resources you have and the skills you have, I think a lot of people struggle with like, well, making a course, I don't have the technology or I don't have the best microphone or the best camera or my backdrop isn't nice or I don't know how, there's all these logistical issues that I think we see people come into contact with and it stops them. Well, if making a video or a course about one topic is exponentially easier than another, like you should do the easy one that doesn't take a lot of software or a lot of like equipment to produce and save that really complex one that takes more and do that later. I don't know, kind of, I feel
Yeah.
like how would you describe low hanging fruit?
I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think it's not lazy. It's not like being like, oh, well, she just did whatever was the easiest for her. It's more about like being strategic and being smart and essentially kind of creating your like little ladder that you can then use to climb up. Like if you start with something that's really easy and doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of money or resources for you to create, and you start with that course that you know would be easier for you, well, you can use then the resources that you earn from that course, basically money or whatever that you earn from that course, to then invest into maybe a more complicated idea. To give you an example, when I was thinking about which course to create for Common Camper first, which is my other course business that's all about vintage campers, I couldn't decide between creating a course about downsizing to live in the camper, like that process of transitioning into living in the camper, or my other idea was like an architectural, because I'm trained in drafting and architecture, was like a drafting course that was like how to draft your interior design of a camper renovation, because we're mostly helping people go into renovated vintage campers and start living in them. So I was trying to decide. I was like, look, people, and it was the same thing. I literally sent out a survey and people wanted both. And I was like, oh,
That didn't
but
help.
yeah, yeah. And like, but the bottom line was that the one about transitioning into living in a vintage camper was completely text-based. It didn't need any videos. It could be completely delivered via email very easily. The one that was about designing and like using a drafting table and all the architecture tools and all of that kind of stuff, that required me to make like very much more produced videos of me actually at my drafting table with all the tools. It required me to tell people that they needed to buy the drafting tools in order to do the course, which to me was a barrier. I was like, okay, so they're going to have to buy this $100 kit just to get started with designing and outlining their ideas. So after looking at the sort of difficulty of like, I didn't have a video camera at that time. I didn't have the resources to make videos. I didn't even know how to like upload a video and host it. Like that to me was overwhelming. So I said, you know what? For this, the low-hanging fruit is the transitioning into a trailer. That is the course that I'm going to start with. And then the more complex video course about how to actually design and use a drafting table and do architectural drawings, that's going to be something I do down the line. And I have to be honest, I haven't made that course yet because it still, to me, feels like there's a lot of barriers to entry for both me and potential students.
Yeah, I think I really like what you said about this being a strategic move, and it doesn't mean it's like the only thing you ever create. Like,
No.
if you're just starting a business, let's all get real. you need money. Like, to be a business, you have to make money. Otherwise, you're not a business. That, like, by definition. So if you're going to create your first topic or your first course, excuse me, and you're kind of tight on funds and you're just beginning and you need to start building some business equity, like, create what you can create the fastest. That's the easiest. That's still a really quality product, but that it can get out next month or 2 months from now, or 2 weeks from now, just depending on how much time you have. Like, you can just devote yourself and whip it out without all these barriers and complications. Then you can start proving yourself. You'll learn a lot of lessons in your first course launch too. I think that's always like such a thing people don't talk about, is how much you're going to learn, like all the lessons from like not only the tech side of things, even if you're just doing an email course, but also just lessons in how you want to communicate and what you want the structure to be, and refund policies and, customer service and how it all works. Like, go easy on yourself. Like, it's going to be a learning process. So pick the low hanging fruit. And once you have that equity, you can reinvest in yourself. And maybe you do need a nice camera to record the video course you want to. You have the funds now to do that because you did the easier low hanging fruit product.
Exactly. And so we actually have like 5 questions that you can ask yourself. In terms of an actual criteria, this is what I've come up with. I'm sure there's other questions you could also use to ask yourself. Maybe even, like I said, about something I hadn't really put into words before, about thinking about the barrier to entry to your student. So there's barrier to entry for you creating the course, but there's also like, if the course that you want to make ultimately requires another investment in like, oh, well, you're going to need to buy $100 worth of equipment in order to do this course. Think about that. I mean, that might affect how your first launch goes. And maybe you do need to kind of prove yourself before people are like, you know what, I'm excited to not only invest in the training, but also in the tools to get there. So I definitely think that's true for our courses in Femtrepreneur. Our lower price courses teach people how to do things for free or very, very cheap using like very inexpensive tools. Like your first 1K is all about creating a very inexpensive type course, like an email course that doesn't cost a lot to deliver. Whereas if you're in Launch Your Signature course, you're investing in Lead Pages and Teachable and all these other software programs that you need for video courses and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I think that's such a great point.
So the questions are, I want you to first thinking about how easy is this idea for you to actually execute on? And I think there's a difference between like, well, I could do this, I could do that. But if you're thinking about pure execution, which is like how you actually get things done, I don't care about like, well, the what ifs or the I could do that, or if only I got this one thing, it would be easy to do it. I'm talking like today, you sitting at your desk with your computer with only the tools at like an arm's length, what could you create? Because really it's like, what is going to be easy for you to make and execute on now, like right now?
And especially when we're comparing multiple topics, like of the 2 or 3 topics you have, like, are they the same level of ease, or is one like exponentially harder? And so it's kind of like, as we go through these 5 questions or criteria, you're going to be like comparing these, and like maybe on question 1, like they're the same level of ease, but on the next questions, they're like, oh, one like really stands out. So definitely keep that in mind as you're going through these, that you're comparing your course topics.
Oh, and here's another good point. Like, think about if you have an advantage in one of the topics that you don't have in the other topics. And again, as an example, another reason why I chose the transitioning into a vintage trailer as the topic and not the design one was because at the time when I created this course, I already had a 30-page essay that I'd written for college about the topic of how I transitioned my life, like how I got rid of stuff and finally moved into a 100-square-foot camper. And so I had this 30-page paper that I had submitted to school, and that actually became the basis of that entire course. So to me, I looked at what I had available to me, and I said, you know what? I already have 30 pages written, and the total course altogether is about 100 pages, 112 or something. But I already had 30 pages written. And to me, that was a big leg up, and that was an advantage that I had. And it was just basically one more check for that course topic. And then the other one would have been me starting from absolute scratch with nothing to go from. So that really helped me think about if you have anything existing that is an advantage for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then think about how affordable would it be to create this course. So some courses that you might want to create in your future would require some more expensive software or an expensive equipment, maybe just extra costs. Like I know like, oh, I need to buy a prop if I show people how to do that. I need to buy this, I need to buy that. That kind of stuff can just kind of, even if you can afford it, it's almost just that it's another barrier, just another barrier to you creating something because you're making a list of, oh, well, if I'm going to spend $200 on equipment, am I going to make it back? And I feel like that can get into a dangerous area of just thinking and not doing.
Yeah. And just when you're comparing, again, it's like maybe they both are expensive to produce, but maybe one's just like a little bit more affordable or like you have some of the things. I don't know. I think it's just a great point because you don't want to spend all this money. We don't encourage people spending money they don't have. So like, don't pick the course topic that's going to make you spend all this money and go into debt that you don't have, we don't encourage that.
Yeah. And I do think like there is absolutely going to be a time in your life, in your business, when you have money from your other products that you can then invest into that like dream program that you want to create, or that like mega awesome, like it has all the bells and whistles and it has a sales page to die for. And there's like a custom video that you had made. And like, there's a time and place for that, but it's probably not your first launch.
Yeah.
And that's honestly where we see people fail, is that their first ever launch, they aim for that. They aim for someone else's like 10th or 15th launch. They want to pull it off on their first launch. And then they fail because they were trying to do something that's just too much for your first time. And you really don't want to try to pull off some sort of mega crazy launch your first time, because you're going to learn so much from your mistakes. Yeah. And a lot of times I'm really grateful that I tested things out in a smaller way before, it's like if some people are like, oh yeah, my first launch was like $500,000. I'm like, that would have destroyed me in my business if that had happened.
Yeah, I mean, like
I couldn't have handled it.
Just for the administrative side alone, I know. It's like all the refunds and just answering questions. Yeah, yes, I agree.
Yeah, like if more than 100 students enroll in your course the first round, I know that it's like everyone wants that and it's amazing, but then all of a sudden you're in a position where you're like, I need to hire like 2 people right now because I did not expect to have this many people, this many tech questions, this many people emailing me every day, this many people looking for my support. It really does change your business. So that's a really good point. Okay, so the other thing is just timing. How quickly can you complete this course? And I really do think that there's something to be said for finishing things quickly. And I think that if you look at 2 ideas and one of them is going to take 2 months and one of them is going to take 2 weeks, you go with the one that's going to take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you just get it out there and you launch it and it's done and it's out there and it's earning money. And again, it doesn't have to be your magnum opus or whatever, but it does need to get out there. And I think there's something to be said for the speed at which you execute. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to take my time. And I know we see people that are like, I'm going to launch in 8 months. And that's fine. Everyone is at their own level. Everyone's doing a different thing and has their own pace. But a course that takes you 8 months to launch is just like, I mean, that's too long.
It's a long time. I think it's a long time for your first product. And I think we have talked about this separately before. For me, at least, I know it took me forever to create my first course because there's a vulnerability in it. And there's almost a part of you that self-sabotages. Like, oh, I could get this out sooner, but like, I'm just not confident enough in it. And you kind of like self-sabotage. And I don't know a better phrase for it. And I think that if you could just pick what you can get out quickly and just like do it, you're going to be so much happier. Because I know as soon as I launched it, I was like, I learned so much. I felt so proud. I started making like passive income because mine was evergreen. And it was like, wow, like this is a whole new world and a whole new phase of my business. Why didn't I start this earlier? And I think that if you can just like in 2 weeks or a month, however much time you have, if you can do it quicker than the other one, do the quicker one. Start making
Go
money
on.
and start like learning those lessons, and then you can start working on the other products that you want to do
Yeah,
or
I really
courses.
think maybe this is the most important part of the criteria, like the speed, because I do think people, the longer you say you're going to take on your course, the less likely it is to ever happen, the less likely it is to ever launch. Like I think there's people who say like, no, I'm going to launch in 8 months, and then it turns into 9 months, and then it's 12 months, and then it doesn't happen. So I think the faster you act, the better off you're going to be in a lot of ways. So definitely pay attention to that part of the criteria. Now, the other one that I would say is most important, and again, this kind of goes along with what we were saying in another episode about how to actually find your students. But it's this idea that before you actually choose your topic, part of your criteria for choosing that topic in the first place should be that you've already identified that there are other audiences, there are forums, there are groups, there are communities online. They can be Facebook groups, they can be subreddits, they can be forums online that people manage and monitor. But there are already existing groups of people, little pockets of people around the internet that already are primed and ready to buy. They don't know who you are. They don't know about you yet. They don't know about your course, but they are like the prime candidates for someone who would want your course. So I think it's really important to literally write down a number. And I do this. I write down an actual number of how many other blogs, audiences, or influencers. Now, when I say audiences, I mean that could be like, oh, I know that so and so runs this niche site that has 100,000 email subscribers. That's an audience that that person has. Or, oh, I know that that person's Facebook group that's dedicated, again, to Honda Elements has 100,000 people in it. That's an audience I can identify. And so I'll actually add up how many audiences and groups I can identify, and the one with the most usually wins. Not saying always, but a lot of times they'll say, well, this one has potentially, 100,000 people in this audience. This one I could only identify like 5,000 people who are interested in it. So look and see kind of what you can find and what you can add up.
Yeah, that
And
makes
that's
sense. And if you're interested in learning more, Mariah mentioned we have gone in depth about how to find your future students, and that was in episode 1. So feel free to go check out episode 1 after you finish listening to this one.
So I think that is also an equally important part of the criteria. That's like, you have to be able to identify either influencers you could collaborate with, or other bloggers, or Facebook groups, or forums, or whatever, but you really have to like know that they exist. And if you are comparing 2 or 3 ideas and one of them clearly has like more of a community around it than the other ones, and you're struggling to find people who would be a good fit for your other idea, just let it go and go for the one that seems like, again, more potential of success, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the final one, which I know, when Emily asked this question, she said she was equally passionate. But then for the other question from Raven, she was saying how her audience had sort of responded to surveys and landing pages and lead magnets showing that two ideas were equally popular. If you're in that position and you feel like, it seems like everyone wants this idea, or there's 2 ideas that my audience equally is interested in. Just ask yourself, how excited are you about this? Because I've definitely been in a position where I was, this is a course that never got very far, but I was trying to create something that I kind of knew in like deep down. I didn't really want to admit it, but I kind of knew that I wasn't super pumped about it. I was like, excited about having a new product, and I really wanted to launch something, and I really wanted to like create some revenue. I really wanted to do a lot of things, but the idea just, it wasn't that same like magical, like, oh my God, I'm glittering with ideas. Like it wasn't that. It just wasn't that. And so I think, if you again, and like I said, we have gotten questions before from people saying, I feel like my best potential idea is not the one I'm most passionate about. That could be dangerous. I do think you could get in a position where you're like, you have students that are relying on you for support and you're not even into supporting them. Like, I mean, that can just be
You definitely want to
bad.
believe in your product. So I think you might be more excited about one than the other, but if you're like generally excited about all of them, I don't know. Basically, you want to believe in your product. So if the low hanging fruit one, you're like less excited than the other one, but you're still excited about, that's still good because then you'll still be able to make like a really quality product. The worst thing is when you do all of this work on like preparing to launch and then all of a sudden you actually are launching and you're like, I don't even think I believe in my product. Like I'm not even excited to promote this course anymore because I don't want to talk about this or I don't want to be known for this. If you don't want to be known for it, don't sell a course on it.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a really good point. Think about it. If not that anything is set in stone, but think about your sort of life portfolio. And it's like, if someone saw that you created this course, would you be super excited and proud? And like, it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. It's better that it's out there. But just think about that feeling of like, oh yeah, I really want to have this in my tool belt. To me, that's what I think of my courses as, like they're all assets in my toolbox or in my tool belt or whatever you want to say. They're assets and they're all important and they're all cumulative. So just thinking like, oh yeah, where does this fit kind of like in my little collection of things that I'm going to create over, the time that I do this. So
I like that visual.
Yeah.
Toolbox, little toolkit.
Or they're like little like shiny eggs in a basket or something.
That's like an Easter basket or something.
I have no idea.
Before I forget, so I know we went through these 5 criterias for how to pick which course topic you should choose. We do actually have a worksheet for you. So if you're kind of listening and driving and you couldn't really write anything down or you want to be able to see it visually, definitely go to thefemshow.com/4 for the show notes as well as downloading that free worksheet. So make sure you go there if you're interested in digging a little deeper on the course criteria.
I kind of have you fill out like different number values for each question that we just went through. So it's a pretty good worksheet where you fill in like number values for each question, and it really helps you actually like mathematically figure out which idea is going to be the most successful.
So at the end of going through the worksheet, you'll kind of be able to see which one you should go with. So
yeah.
That's an awesome worksheet. Thanks, Mariah.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. So go to thefemshow.com/4. That's the number 4. And grab that and grab the other blog post link so that if you're struggling with thinking of your idea in the first place, you'll get some help with that. And if you guys want to watch us with visuals,
and you actually in our homes recording this.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to see our faces recording our podcast episodes, you can go to thefemshow.com/YouTube and you can actually watch us recording these episodes if you prefer that with your morning cereal.
Yeah. It is unedited, so warning that we might say or do crazy hand movements or dances. You never know.
I feel like with the podcast, they're missing my gesticulations. Like I'm like this whole time.
I know we both
I'm
talk
really
with our
going,
hands. I do a bunch, and then I'm like, no one sees me, but
no one's seeing me making this box in the air and then diagramming out what's happening.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, if they want to see that, you can go to thefemshow.com/YouTube. But I hope this was super helpful. Thank you, Emily and Raven, for submitting your questions. You can always ask a question too. Just find out more at thefemshow.com.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.